So once we've read the question really closely and have identified the key things that it wants us to make groups of, we can then prepare to organize the documents in some logical manner to make sure that we're putting them in groups that will address the question. In a way similar to the grid that we set up on free response questions, we can do a similar grid for the DBQ question with each of the columns indicating one of the different groups that you'll end up writing about in the body paragraphs. So each column, as you can see here, will correspond to a different body paragraph. As I encourage you to do for the free response question, we just want to reiterate for ourselves and list out at the top what precisely the groups need to address. What are we looking for? So in this case, I've noted very generally, we're looking for a cause or a response to the peasants' revolt. Should have said cause of or response to. I apologize for not having this parallel. So those are the three things that we're setting up. We're looking for causes and responses, and then in the column below we can list the documents that we'll use and maybe make some brief notes about what we'll do with those. So then we can get into the documents. Now that we have in mind the things we're looking for, we have an agenda for our reading, we can look at the documents themselves. So here are two documents from the DBQ itself. The first one I'm reading through, I'm looking at the attribution first, as I've encouraged you to do. Read the attribution before you even think about the text itself. So I notice this fellow Leonhard von Eck, the Chancellor of Bavaria, writing to another person named Duke Ludwig of Bavaria. And as I read the document and look over it, which you can do here, I'm observing that this gives me insight into both causes and responses. So according to this source, I see that there's a cause having to do with theological issues. It seems rooted in Luther's ideas that they are misinterpreting, perhaps. And as a response, we get a sense of a negative reaction coming from an elite person. This von Eck and this Duke title, as well as the Chancellor title, tells me all about who these people are. And so I can start to think about this as a response. Similar thing in document 2. I focus on this person, Sebastian Lotzer. The document tells me that it's a craftsperson and a lay preacher, which means not part of the ministry. And another preacher, so both lay and sort of trained in the theological seminary in Memmingen. So as I read this document, I identify a cause about being something to do with economic exploitation. It's talking about lords shouldn't force more services. But the response is that the peasants are assertive, but they're still respectful. That last sentence I can use to offer a more nuanced interpretation. Okay, so as I'm making notes on each of these documents, I'm starting to identify some topics, big themes that could become groups. I move on to another document, and I'll just take it from the middle of the packet, document 8, for instance. Lorenz Fries, chief advisor to the Archbishop of Würzburg. It says it's a secret report. These are all noteworthy things. As I read this document, I start to identify that the cause has something again to do with economic exploitation as well as theological beliefs. And here again we have a negative reaction from elites. We know this person is an advisor, so they have a high up position. They're working for an archbishop. That title also tells me that these are Catholic elites, which will be something we'll come back to in a little bit. So once I have now read the documents, I've made some notes both about causes and responses, I can start to identify some common patterns. Of course, I'm doing this with only 3 sources. When you have a full 12 to draw on, you get a lot more variety, and it becomes, in a way, easier to group because you have more evidence to work from. And so now I go back to my chart and I start putting in some causes and responses in place of just the generic placeholder that I'm looking for a cause or response. So I'm going to argue 3 main points. I'm going to argue 2 causes and 1 response. I have to address all parts of the question to get that point in the thesis. So I'm going to argue in one paragraph that the peasants' revolt is caused by economic inequality and exploitation. I'm going to argue in another paragraph that it's caused by the Protestant theology, specifically of sola fide, as creating a sense of equality among believers. And then I'm going to argue that as a response that elites throughout the Holy Roman Empire expressed fear. Now the good thing about identifying these groups is that I've also done myself a great service of developing my topic sentences simultaneously. So as I go back and then when I prepare to write my body paragraphs, I already have my first topic sentence there that's caused by economic inequality. I have my second topic sentence here and my third topic sentence here. So identifying the groups also gives us the topic sentences.